AI is not magic. It's still software, hardware, and data. A lot of the type of risks you are familiar with apply to AI, but there are nuances, which is how quickly you can do it. It might be quite difficult to understand, but also understanding what is valuable to my business. Don't get fallen by the hype. Think very carefully about your use cases.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Dr. Peter Garraghan. Peter is the CEO and co-founder of MindGuard, a leader in artificial intelligence security testing software. As a professor of computer science at Lancaster University, Peter is an internationally recognized expert in AI security. He has devoted his career to developing advanced technologies to combat the growing threats facing AI. And with over 11 million euros in research funding and more than 60 published scientific papers, his contributions span both scientific innovation and practical solutions. So, Peter, welcome to our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I believe that we will have a very thoughtful conversation on the topic of evolving threat landscape in the AI space. And but before that, could you tell us a short story about yourself, your career path, and what brought you to where you are right now, and what you guys at MindGuard are up to these days?
Sure, happy to do so. So I have been a university professor for the last about a decade, and I've always been driven by positive social change. I care about innovation, and I think technology is a great way to do so. Dedicated my entire career looking at building new types of secure systems, machine learning systems, and distributed systems. Spent a lot of time collaborating with big tech companies, but also researchers and government officials in the UK. And the quick story about MindGuard is about 10 years ago, I ran a pretty big research lab in the UK. I remember thinking, this is before ChatGPT, by the way. This is in the world of AI. We're looking at natural language processing, NLP, and vision models, like we call convolutional neural networks, CNNs. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure if the current security techniques and tools work against deep neural networks. But I thought, I'm a scientist, I want to make sure there's something new here. So the next few years, myself and my colleagues, we spent a lot of time looking at problems in AI, found out there are some big problems, and we realized then need to do something about this very quickly, because every facet of society will be using these types of AI in society, in government, in personal usage, and we need to build technology to secure the future of AI, hence created the formation of MindGuard.
All right, fantastic. So let's go deep into our topic. So can you tell us about the story, how about evolving threat landscape in AI currently? Because AI and Gen AI models introduce new risks and amplify existing cybersecurity challenges. Perhaps you can give us some examples. Of course, many people know about deepfakes or something like this, but why also traditional security tools fail to address such challenges?
Sure, yes. So yes, people are using AI in a lot in cybersecurity, but like you said, we're doing the opposite, which is how do you secure AI itself? And there are different perspectives on this problem. I like to have a very empirical view on the world, which is AI is still software, data, and hardware. And all the type of security problems and risks in software apply to AI. So, for example, think of SQL injection, so database injection, and prompt injection have a lot of similarities. If I'm trying to bypass a network traffic detection tool and trying to bypass a classification in an AI model, it's the same idea, but where it breaks down is that the concepts, how you do it is quite different. Because the problem here is when we talk about AI, people are talking really about transformer architecture or deep neural networks like ChatGPT and DeepSeek and these type of models. These models are intrinsically opaque or black box, so you really can't see the inner workings. But also they're incredibly stochastic or random, which means if I talk to it 10 times, it might give me 10 different answers. These two things together is a nightmare in cybersecurity to actually secure any type of software and data. So the example I give is, what type of problems do you see risks of AI? It's less about AI taking over the world and causing huge societal disruption, even though that is a valid concern. Most of the concerns we are seeing is like what you see in other software, which is someone's connected a large language model to a data source, and you can get that data by instructing and manipulating the LLM to give me that data. For example, if I ask it in another language, sometimes it will give it to me the information. If I can build an encoding, so I convert my instruction into like base 64, it can give me the data out. So again, people in cybersecurity professionals, these things aren't new in terms of I'm trying to get data leakage, I'm trying to cause outages, I'm trying to disrupt my organization. But with AI opening up a new attack vector, and given it is very, very black box and it's very random, makes it very difficult to apply your current tools because if you look at code scanning of an AI model, it's a bunch of matrices and numbers together. There's no context there. Therefore, you have to do continuous testing against it.
Awesome. So, how in this case organizations can safely adopt and deploy AI while managing security risks?
Well,
Of course, we have some regulations, but maybe you can explain better from your perspective as both CEO and lecturer, professor.
sure. Yes. So I think the question I encourage all security practitioners to focus on is I have AI. If I place the word AI with another piece of software or data, is there something new here? So some of the problems in the past has been a lot of AI projects in companies have come out of the data scientists and the research labs, and they would have a lot of free reign. And now they're kind of clashing with the security teams. And the security teams know cybersecurity really well, maybe not so much in the AI space. So questions such as how do I minimize my risk of AI should be how do I minimize my data security risks or minimize my software risks in AI? So a lot of those current techniques will work in principle. It breaks down, though, there are differences in AI. So, for example, if you have a development pipeline of creating AI models and applications, you should be applying software security, threat modeling, practice, and development tools to your AI applications. So you don't put it live without controls in place. You would never put any software live without testing. You wouldn't put any software live without actually having some sort of sign off from the security teams. AI should not be an exception to this. So fundamentally, it's people have a habit of treating AI in isolation because it's very valuable. Governments talk about this, but if you put it as part of your current processes, identify the gaps, and there are gaps that need to be filled, and try and merge it to that tool set, you will eliminate actually a lot of the problems very, very quickly.
Mhm. And what are the kind of regulatory kind of guidelines that you can mention which work in this space?
Yep, there are three different ones you could look at. So the first one is the ones that already exist. So things like GDPR and 27001. These things already apply to the AI space because data leakage from an AI, data leakage from another system, saying some problems. So I would definitely look to those as well, and then think how does the AI space make it different. The second bucket is that yes, there are AI specific regulation compliance emerging. So there is ISO 42001. There is the EU AI Act, which has quite prescriptive in terms of the type of AI risks and type of damages, and also there are other organizations trying to form their own type of regulatory recommendations for AI specifically. And the third one is it's not enforced to be mandated, but it's very established in the industry. So organizations such as OWASP and MITRE do give guidance on good practices on AI security, cybersecurity, and risks. And if you look to most government organizations themselves, I think every country in the world has actually recommended their own best practices of AI. I think these three or four buckets will get you a lot of the way there to actually secure your AI in the organization.
Hmm. And what do you see as a kind of a future and the trends in this AI and cybersecurity? What will happen in the next decade? Of course, we cannot probably predict for such a long period because it's all been for generative AI for about 2 years or 3 years. But what do you think from your perspective?
Yes, I think in research, 10 years is simultaneously a lifetime, but also very quick. So there are some I think the best way to answer this is give you a little bit of history of where we were 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, what really started this trend of AI. So AI has been around for decades. It's not a new concept. And it wasn't until around 2014 where, especially Google's made a lot of push on this, demonstrated that deep neural networks could outperform a lot of the other types of machine learning algorithms across purposes. People got really interested and excited, combined with cheaper data and commodity hardware. It wasn't until 2017 where they cracked a pretty hard problem in natural language processing, which gave rise to the transformer architecture, which kind of underpins all of the LLMs we see nowadays. And there are new architectures coming out every single day. The point is that 10 years from ago, they were looking at problems and they cracked them, and we have innovation that's exploding. I expect in 10 years' time, what we think of AI today will be seen as traditional AI in 10 years' time. They've been used three different types. What that's going to look like remains difficult to be seen. But I think some predictions, if you look at other types of software paradigms, so the one I give example of, think of service-oriented architecture, services. So we used to build services as in big monolithic giant systems that did everything. So if I was trying to book a flight or a hotel, one big system did everything. But what we have nowadays is different services, and maybe service that specializes in finding flights, one service that books flights, one service that actually looks at booking hotels. What will happen with AI is that you can have lots of AI that combine together for certain specific tasks, and it's going to run these things. So we're already starting to see it now with the rise of agents. And
Agents, yeah,
I'm not a big fan of like buzzwords, but really what we're looking at is agents aren't a new concept. Been around for many, many years, decades before AI existed. These are software agents that use AI to make decision making. And that is very powerful because you give it instructions, it can look at the instructions and decide how to execute these things. Why I envision to happen is we're seeing it right now is if I give a general purpose activity, for example, can you generate me a chat, some code, make me a chat bot with this context and put it online? You can break that down to certain tasks and different type of an agent can decide how that can be done. But also we can call other AI models and other software tools to build this workflow and do it for me. Why do we like AI? AI automates things that take time and can maybe find patterns that we can't find. I expect in 10 years' time, this will become much more mature, which means when I ask any type of request, it will call the right tools and the right workflow and keep me in the loop to some extent and actually do things that we do nowadays much, much quicker. And I'll give you one concrete example about this is I saw that yesterday. If we were trying to arrange to get to a restaurant by email or text, how many steps do we have to do? It's like, hey, I would like to go have dinner. And you might say to me, yes, where should we go? And I say, well, maybe we should go to this restaurant. What do you think? Okay. And say, okay, let's find a time, let's find a booking. Lots of steps. If we have personal AI agents or whatever you want to call it at the time, those two themselves can figure out, okay, I've done all the busy work for you. Here are the dates and calendars, and let us know, and we'll book it immediately. So we've taken a 10-minute activity down to like 10 seconds. I think in 10 years' time, we're going to have a lot more of that, which means you're going to have an assistant that follows you around, that does your transcripting of what you're doing in meetings. It's going to make bookings for you. It's going to do more complex activities. So that's one slice. And I'm sure there are other slices as well based on innovation, because innovation isn't linear and it comes out in terms of just innovation that occurs. And the last thing I'd say is AI today, everyone's claiming AI does everything. That is not going to be the case. What's going to happen? People are going to filter and realize that AI is very good at certain tasks and applications. So the ones I see nowadays is LLMs, generative AI, is great for things like document summarization, question answering, and translation. Fantastic. I think the use cases are not very useful for. They will not be built as applications, but I think in 10 years' time, there'll be other types of technology, AI or otherwise, as we call it, they'll be built for general purpose to do so.
Yeah, with advance also of the technology of what is it? I forgot the word. Not advanced IT technology. Just was not nuclear. I forgot the word. Quantum computing. Quantum
Yes.
computing. That's okay. It might multiply. They say also that they can all this Bitcoin key. They crack immediately, right? Or something like
Exactly.
this.
It's innovation's so hard to predict, and the timelines are so long. So again, not only another quick story about history, but think of cloud computing. Cloud computing is a pretty big industry. People are not going to disagree with this.
Of course.
The key technology that underpins cloud computing is virtualization. Virtualization was around in the 1960s. It was around for many, many decades, but it was too expensive to run because the amount of memory the machines has was like not even megabytes. It wasn't until A, the x86 architecture could be virtualized, and B, it became cheap. Memory was cheap enough to virtualize. Guess what? Massive proliferation of AI, cloud computing infrastructure. Think of deep neural networks or the neural network. That's the artificial neural network was conceived many decades ago. It won the Turing Award and other type of awards recently. And then, it came cheap commodity hardware, cheaper data, and they cracked some problems, and now it's everywhere. So in 10 years' time or further from that, it might be the next evolution of AI. It might not even be based on the transformer architecture. But there are other technologies been around for a few decades, but they were not feasible due to a bunch of reasons. I expect in 10 years' time that will also emerge as a computing thing.
Mhm. So, Peter, I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What are the major misconceptions in the field of AI security space that you strongly disagree with?
Sure. Probably quite a few. I'll probably pick the one which I think there's two I think are really important. The first is people have a habit of attaching anthropomorphic characteristics or human-like behaviors to AI, and it's not our fault because humans are captured by the imagination of AI for actually centuries. Actually, the automaton, like the human golem and robots and stuff. AI is still software and data and hardware. It can mimic what we do because it's been trained on it's been trained on human language and imagery and art. So on one hand, I wouldn't necessarily treat it as an entity first and foremost. It's still a system. But on the other hand, it does exhibit some peculiarities and do things that make it more human like. So we have people who are on one side saying AI is useless, it's just software, it can do nothing, I don't trust this thing at all, versus saying AI's second coming is to transform everything in the world. I think the answer's going to be in the middle somewhere. In some ways, it'll re-transform some areas. Others will not help whatsoever. Means to be seen. That's the first thing. The second one is, especially with DeepSeek coming out, there's a lot of worries about AI and the risk that involves. So things like weaponization and changing elections and this stuff is super super important. Don't get me wrong, it's really important. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of the actual practical problems of AI that we see nowadays, which is most of the problems we find are it can leak data because someone's misconfigured the LLM to the system, or it can be bypassed easily because no one's built the thing properly. And the last thing I'd say is a lot of worry about safety of AI. Like, how can I build a bomb? Asking an AI model. In my experience, that is not that interesting. Jailbreaking isn't that interesting. It's very easy to do for jailbreaking models. We've done it for decades. We've done it for years already. What's relevant is, yes, all AI models eventually you can break and do things they shouldn't. But what is more important is if I use an AI in this application context and I build it normally as I would have I build it in like normal applications by threat modeling and testing, in that context, what do I care about? So the example I give people is think of a candle shop. If I have a candle shop using an I don't care if it talks about bombs or meth. I don't care about political discourse. I can filter that stuff out. What I care about is my candle, is it going to tell me how to make my own candles? Can I leak information about my customers who are purchasing my candles? Can I tell it to recommend my competitors' candles? That stuff is super relevant to my use case. So yes, can I jailbreak LLM? Yes, absolutely. That's not as hard to do. But if I build an application with an AI with some degree of robustness, can I get vulnerabilities and weaknesses out that are relevant to that use case? And right now, we've gone from people saying AI does everything to saying I can jailbreak this thing. Isn't that interesting? To now, actually, I can do these bad things, but is it really relevant if I apply even a semblance of security practices to it?
Right. So let's talk about how risk managers can apply this knowledge because our main audience is risk compliance managers. What is the one thing that they should start to prioritize now that they are not doing currently? What would it be?
Sure. So I think the main thing is education in this space. So AI is still software, and all software can manifest security risks, business risk, and safety risks. The trick is figuring out if you're going to use AI in your context, what type of risk do your customers and your organization care about? And then you work with the appropriate teams to actually figure this out. And again, this is not a new concept, but the question is understanding how AI works and how it can generate risk, what it emerges from, then work with your teams to do so. That's the first step. And there's lots of material online from OWASP and MITRE, Even our website, we talk about risk and AI, so people can check out MindGuard. Once you get that understanding, work with your teams and saying, what are they building? What are they creating? What are they purchasing? And just ask the question saying, if I'm using AI, have I replaced the word AI with software or data? Is there something new here? In some cases, there will not be. Apply your current controls. That's good. Other cases, it won't be. And if you understand those type of nuances, then you actually have a risk plan in place. Leverage your current security risk controls and information. But I'm sure organizations, you have AI governance. They have their own AI risk policies. Look to both of those and be very critical in saying what is actually needed here in my context and apply it.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the main mission of MindGuard, and what are your kind of specific selling point?
Sure. I built MindGuard to secure the world's AI. Even a decade ago, this is a huge problem. So if we can get people to use AI with minimal risk, that is security, safety, and business, we have succeeded because we think it's super valuable. But like any other software and any other asset, you need to make sure that you understand, observe, and control the risk. So MindGuard, we built a tool from our research lab that can do continuous testing of different types of AI models and applications. And that allows you to discover, surface, and mitigate different risks. So fundamentally, like any other piece of asset in your organization, you understand for the AI, what are the risks? Why do they manifest? Can I map that to compliance? And then can I tell my appropriate teams to go fix it so you can use AI and adopt it into your organization securely?
Awesome. So, if we summarize our interview for someone who is listening and would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would it be?
I think two things. AI is not magic. It's still software, hardware, and data. A lot of the type of risks you're familiar with apply to AI, but there are nuances, which is how quickly you can do it. It might be quite difficult to understand, but also understanding what is valuable to my business. Don't get fallen by the hype. Think very carefully about your use cases. And the second thing is education in the space. There's lots of material coming out about risks. Do not be blinded just by top down what is safety problems. That stuff is super important in terms of big existential threats. Think closer to home in terms of if I adopt this asset into my organization, what are the type of risks I'm going to have? If I can't evidence those risks, how do I evidence them? What tools do I need? What type of people do I need to hire as well?
All right. So, Peter, yeah, that were all my questions. Perhaps if I forgot to ask you something that you feel is important to our audience, please go ahead.
I think everything is important to the audience, but fundamentally, I think people should be optimistic about the use of AI because it is a good tool to automate and make things faster. This is not a new concept of technology. All technology can be used for good things, but on the flip side, all technology can also have risk. The trick here is don't be blinded by people attaching the characteristics that AI can do everything. That is not the case. But think sensibly about what type of risks do you think are most important to your organization and whether the interest of AI will introduce it. And if they are, how do you manage, observe, and control it? That's really the key thing.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Peter. And I wish you and your team at MindGuard a great success and hope we can cooperate in the future with the global risk community and share some great stuff from your company.
Great. Thank you very much.